Saint Valentine. I am Carl. I'm an alcoholic. My sobriety date is August 22nd, 2014.
My name is Lindsey. I'm an alcoholic, and my sobriety date is September 6th, 2015.
This is SoberPod.
Soberpod.com. Yeah, SoberPod, keep it authentic, no facades. If it's real, then you know it's ours. Welcome.
And SoberPod is a podcast dedicated to the idea that one addict or alcoholic helping another is crucial in building a life in recovery. Join us this season as we read from Lindsey's book, The Spirit Vigilante, or Spirit Vigilante, and also my book, 366 Effing Days Sober. Not related, by the way. These books are completely separate, but of the same topic. So welcome, people, back to the show, and welcome, Lindsey, yet again. So Lindsey is going to be a recurring character on the on the podcast moving forward. Hopefully, we can establish more background history rapport, just like much I did with Chelsea. So I think people listening in will appreciate that. And I was really thinking about this earlier today. I'm really getting to know you like through this podcast, right? Like we don't know each other like at all. And so I think that's really unique too, so that everybody will kind of like, so as I get to know you, you get to know me, etc. It's like people will get to know us. I think that's beautiful.
Yes, right? That is beautiful.
Yeah. So Lindsey, you are we started we text throughout the week topics, and we were talking about relationships, and only because you brought it up and I didn't even think about it, because that's the kind of asshole I am. Is that Valentine's Day it's on Friday, right? And so obviously relationships are a good topic for Valentine's Day. So Lindsey, do you want to read from your portion of the book where you really talk about, like, in your book, intimacy, or where did you want to read? Where did you want to start?
Yeah, I was going to start with intimate relationships, and I just wanted to say, if anyone is single, this is just as relevant for you, because it talks about letting people into that space. So whether the most important relationship is the one with yourself. And as much as I didn't want that to be true, it is wholeheartedly true. Mm-hmm. So just so no one feels singled out and stops listening at this point, there's definitely something for you.
What you're saying is all the single ladies.
All the single ladies.
So I started to sing all the single ladies.
Get on the dance floor. Okay. If you like it, you better put a ring on it.
Yeah.
Mic drop. We're done. Okay. So this is from my book, Spirit Vigilante, and I am talking about intimate relationships in this instance. So I say your partner is your co-collaborator. They support you, your purpose, your projects, your endeavors, without hindering, complicating, delaying, or confusing progress. In essence, they cause more beneficence than harm. I know emotions run high in this area, and it's not so black and white, but sometimes we do have to step back and look at a situation objectively. This section will surely trigger some. I've been there, and I understand the sensitivity around this topic. It can feel like an attack, but this is also why I'm so passionate about it. So then I go on to how self-exploration can occur when you're in an intimate partnership, but if you're already on the fence about that person and whether or not they're going to support you, I say this, if it's not a hell yes, then it's a clear no. So asking yourself, some tools I like to use, asking yourself if you'd still be with this person if you knew from this day forward they would stay exactly how they are at this moment, because there is no guarantee, and you're really, that's a big risk you're taking if you haven't seen any change, So I talk a lot about in this chapter protecting your energy and how balancing personal growth with relationships can be difficult, but definitely is possible. And so I guess today what we want to talk about is managing those relationships in sobriety, because I know for me, addiction and codependency go very, very well together. And when I was in addiction, I didn't have to think about the interpersonal function of a relationship because everything was all about me, and I lied to get what I wanted, and I was manipulative. And so now, having been in several relationships in sobriety, it's a totally different experience and such a rich and beautiful growth process internally as well. So do you have anything to add to that, Carl?
Oh God, do I have shit to add to that?
You're kind of quiet.
Well, yeah, because this is completely loaded topic for me. I'm actually, I have oh gosh, I don't even know how to explain it. I talked to my therapist today, not today, but in this time, and one of the major topics that I talk to my therapist about is the relationship with my wife and others. I mean, that's all there is to it. Like, it's really like. Moreover, as you go, like, it's great in recovery. It's like, what is it that Maslow's hierarchy of needs or whatever the hell that is, exactly. Right? It's like, I stopped the drinking, I stopped the arguments, I stopped, again, I start to maintain life, and I'm no longer flipping people off on the freeway or causing issues, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And I pretty much run into a routine of sobriety, which is great and wonderful. Like, look at me, I'm living life, and it's wonderful. But sobriety be really fucking great if it wasn't for all these relationships. So it's like, because for me, this seems to be like the number one, like, this is the holy grail of my recovery, is to be able to manage relationships with others. And again, talking about all the other layerings of like trauma, background, past relationships, fears, and, all the other insecurities and codependencies, and like, put all, and then don't forget the history. Like, I'm married, right? Like, I'll tell you what, if I met somebody right now, they would be getting the best version of Carl, right? Ever. And they would probably be super stoked. Like, oh yeah, like this dude, look at all the stuff he does. Like, you know what I mean? Like all this stuff.
Yeah, I do know.
But the fact is that, with my wife, it's like, we got 25 years of history. She had 15 years of my drinking and only 10 years of my sobriety. But she knows the 15 years. You know what I'm saying? She's still living with that person, and I'm still trying to make up for that person, So there's a lot of heavy lifting to do along that relationship. And you talk about manipulation and getting what I want and being selfish and self-centered. It's like, do that to somebody for 15 years and think that they're actually going to turn out sane. It would drive anybody crazy. And just the fact that she's still trying to do the same thing, right? To be in the relationship, to be, attentive and, and grow in her own path as well. Man, it's a lot of work. It really is work. No doubt about that. So do I have a lot to say about it? Oh yeah, I got a shit ton to say about it. So Lindsey, tell me, so I want to know from your point of view, because I know a lot of people aren't like me, right? So most marriages don't survive, alcoholism, let alone survive recovery. So
or like time.
Yeah, or just time. Right. So I want to know from you, like, what is it like getting into a relationship in recovery? What before, like, who you were contrasted to who you are now? Like, what's the bigger differences?
Well, I do want to say I respected the rule of not dating within the first year. In fact, I did that for a little bit longer because I just knew that I had to work on myself, and that's probably one of the.
What
best.
Did you do? No, I'm kidding.
I don't know.
just sit around, drink coffee.
No, I, as silly as it sounds, I really tried to get to know myself. And something that my sponsor said was, choosing character building over comfort. And I never forgot that. And it sucked. And there was a lot of crying.
If I wasn't in a relationship, I would explore myself thoroughly all the time. Tell that
Stop.
would go. I've been telling me to do that all
You're
the time.
just trying to get into your action step.
It's my reflections.
I know what you're
my
doing.
daily challenges.
Your reflection, my bad. I know what you're doing.
No, that was actually on Monday. Actually, that was the.
Okay. That wasn't the Valentine's Day one.
That's not the Valentine's Day one.
You protected the sacredness of Saint Valentine.
Actually, I have my Valentine's reading is about friendships more than it is about relationships.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's kind of neat. But I mean, it's about relationships, but more about friendships than anything else. Yeah.
Yeah. So once I started getting in relationships and sobriety, I was so focused on being a good partner, whereas the opposite was true in my addiction. It was just who can be the best person for me. I deserve the best, but I wasn't giving anything. And then I felt like I had so much to atone for that I had to be this perfect girlfriend with brand new people, not people from my past. But I was so scared of becoming that again that I kind of went the other direction.
The pendulum swung to being too attentive,
yes,
and neglecting,
like caretaker and subservience, and I became very, very vulnerable to that kind of behavior. I really learned. I got to experience both sides of it, right? Being the addict and dating the addict in sobriety. So. Yeah, I think the biggest difference was really, and through all my relationships, always keeping my growth in the forefront because it only benefits the relationship. Like it's a win-win whether I stay with that person or not because I'm so scared of losing myself again to the point of.
Oh, I get that 100%.
Yeah. Like I'm so scared of losing control.
Like once you find well, for me, I did not know what I liked or disliked. I didn't, I was completely in this codependent kind of a way. Again, I've said this before on the podcast where it's like, if you ask me, if you're my wife and you ask me to, where do you want to go to eat? I would literally default to what you wanted, period. Like I was so avoidant, but one of the things that I learned is like I started to have likes and dislikes and I started to express myself. And I did the pendulum swing too, like where I would assert myself very differently because I'm like, now I'm being me, more about me and I'm not going to do, and I wouldn't give in on certain things and, have an opinion. And it's like, oh my God, like it's what they call like the terrible twos, right? Like, you get into recovery and it's like suddenly you're like, 2 years in and you think you know some shit about yourself and so you're going to assert yourself and we make all these mistakes and they're good mistakes to make, don't get me wrong. I'd rather be making the mistakes than going back to drinking and drugging and fucking things up the old way because that was that was pointless. It's like, all that ever did was burn bridges and all that it ever did was hurt people. So I'd rather take the bumps and bruises of learning how to be in a relationship these days than trying to be in one in those days, that's for sure.
It's just crazy making. It's just chaos.
Yeah,
at least it was for me.
Yeah, we are like the big book talks about again being a tornado and other and so I think one of the hardest things though about being in my case is the making of amends, is like the long-term amends. I remember asking my sponsor John, who died, I would ask him like how come everybody else gets to be an asshole with impunity but I gotta fucking toe the line, like, and when do I stop making these fucking amends, like, you know what I mean, like I'm tired of eating this fucking crow. And he was like, forever. And I was like, you motherfucker. I hated to hear that shit. You know what I mean? But it's so true. So, and that's like, so when I think to the point that we're trying to get to, or that I see anyway, is that the more comfortable I am with myself and the more assured I am of my convictions, my virtues and my values and my mission and my purpose. That's a lot. That's like a lot of shit. But the more I am in tune with that stuff, the better I am at and able to handle like that kind of understanding. right? Like, because then I go, oh, like, this is who I am. This is what I want. This is what I need, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then as soon as I start to address those things, then this other stuff, like, somebody being an asshole with impunity doesn't really affect me as much, right? Because I
So
know
true.
what I'm after in this thing. One of the things you said, in your emails, and I don't know, or I don't know if it was like in our exchanges back and forth, but one of the things I would love to talk to you about, which is kind of what you're doing in your relationships now, which is like, learning to love yourself and then being able to love somebody else. But I think one of the things that, in my case, which is I had to be the one that risked loving before I was loved, right? Because let me talk about in a relationship, one of the things that I was so hurt and so traumatized growing up. I don't think that I ever really loved my wife the way in which she expected or that she deserved. Meaning, when I was drinking, I was too afraid to love somebody in the fear that I would get hurt. Does this make sense to you?
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
so I never fully gave of myself to somebody else in a way that was more meaningful, right? In a way that was more, I guess, not codependent, but clearly like supportive and being a true like companion. And like you talk about in your book, like that ability to be somebody's partner and to be their supporter and to be like in their cheering section and doing that kind of stuff. Yeah, I was never able to do that. And only in 2020, I read Eric Fromm's book, The Art of Loving. And I was like, oh, wow, like that really opened me up to say, like, my wife, my partner, she deserves the best loving that I can give her. And I need to risk loving her, even though she may still be resentful and hateful about all that alcoholism, even though I need to be the one that steps into and risks loving regardless of how it's reciprocated. I need to forget. So I need to risk loving without expecting it in return. Does that make sense?
Definitely. And like managing your expectations and loving to love, which if it's a true act of love, we aren't doing it for something in return, right?
It has no expectation. Yeah. It has, and there's no, which I've always had a problem with growing up, right? Which is I would do something for you in the name of love, quote unquote, but I certainly expected something back, right?
Yeah. I didn't know there was only other reason.
So talk to me about that. You talk about it in your book and about like, not only like, do you expect people in a certain way, you expect people, which rightly so, to show up in your life the same way, right? To a certain degree, that's what you're looking for. You're looking for, and then, I've already made my bed. I'm laying in it and she's laying next to me. So, but when you go to pick a partner, how do you look for people like that? What kind of measuring sticks do you use these days? I mean, before it was like, did they have like a mobile home? And I remember when I was drinking, when I was 25, 26, 27, I would go to the bars and I would be like, when did I go from asking what's your major to how many kids do you have? Right? Like that's
right. When did that happen?
Yeah, I was like, what the fuck? It happens pretty damn quick. Well, and especially if you're lowering your standards,
sure.
Yeah, I was quickly lowering my standards, so I would go from what's your major to how many kids do you have?
Yeah, that kind of reminds me of, because I didn't realize everyone was growing up except me. So that reminds me of when I first started realizing I need to look for wedding rings on men's hands, which didn't mean anything to me. But
I mean, some people still have the issue of not paying attention. Yeah.
So, yeah, that's such a good question. I think, well, you said what the standards were before was like, do you think I'm hot? I think you're hot. Let's date.
Are you available on Saturday?
Even if you're not.
Yeah.
Even though I'm in a relationship myself, I'm not going to date you because that's what I want to do. It was just crazy. And so in my book, I kind of talk about relationships, and you were saying you call this your front row people, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So I look at it as who you're keeping on the payroll. And it seems like a very black and white logical way to do things, and you can't control all the people in your life. I know you're thinking, oh yeah, but I have to work with this person every day. But you can manage your energy around it. And I give the example of one of my exes where I just had given so much and tried so hard to have him function in my life, but then I just couldn't keep him on my payroll because it was depleting me of all of my resources.
You're fired.
For
You're
everyone
fired.
else. Exactly. That's what I said in that voice.
In the Trump voice. You're fired.
Yeah. Oh, I knew exactly what you're talking. And so, yeah, that's like, what are my measures? So I'm dating someone now. We met in a different way than going out and trying to date, or being set up or anything like that. We were doing a lot of yoga at the time. And so just the fact that we had that in common, I never used to date people that I had things in common. Like I said, it just all revolved around.
Well, yeah, I didn't date things I had because if I had dated people that I had commonalities with, they would be totally in debt. They would drink and cause like more chaos. I couldn't stand having too much chaos, right? I mean, just the chaos I created was enough. If I drank with people I had shit in common with, there would be nobody to balance me the fuck out. Like it'd be a fucking shitstorm.
Well, yeah, and it's so funny because I only dated people that drank like I drank. So I remember I went on a date with a police officer once, and he was like, "You're already drunk. Like, did you drink before this?" And I was so,
you're like, arrest me, motherfucker.
Right. I was so taken aback because I was like, you didn't drink before this? That was my lifestyle. And I that didn't faze me in the least. It was basically just like, this date is over. You're boring. I'm going to go somewhere and drink with people who are cooler than you, is how I did it. So that used to be just to give you kind of a litmus test of where I was.
Yeah, you nerd who doesn't drink to oblivion and has a job and
so
probably
boring.
pays your bills.
I
You son of a bitch.
Like a house. Yeah.
You stable son of a bitch.
That's truly how I felt. Truly. It was like, it did not even.
The joke's on you.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's
great. So one of the things I talk about in my book, when you're in a relationship, and if you don't know the right move and you think there might be some toxic tendencies in there, or it's depleting your energy, I talk about collecting data, and kind of sounds like I'm taking the love and emotion out of it or being uncompassionate. But I'm just saying, like, sometimes we think we're helping that person by being their hero and playing the martyr. And really both of us are being harmed,
Mm-hmm.
So if you can't keep them on the payroll, and I know that's such a simple thing for such a huge concept, but I had to learn that I am better off alone than in a relationship that's dysfunctional. Because before sobriety, I always had to be with somebody. Like, that's what defined me. That made me know that I was okay. I had no concept. So now I really enjoy my own company, and I really can be by myself a lot of the time. And that is the biggest, we talked about this, I think, in the hobbies one, like the hobbies episode. That is the biggest win. Like, I think you've won at life when you can sit in solitude, because then you are choosing who you want to be around and what situations you want to be present for. Whereas if you're not comfortable with yourself, you're just grabbing at anything around you, and you're emotionally dependent on so many other factors that are ever changing. So it's so empowering to have that relationship with yourself, and you can work on that whether you are in a romantic partnership or not.
And there's it's funny you mentioned like this, being alone or being in a relationship. And I instantly thought of this statement. It's like, it's a joy to be hidden, but a disaster to not be found. Right. So if you're that person who seeks, union, quote unquote, with somebody else.
Oh, okay.
It's like, that's where I see, like, Valentine's Day is like, is again one of these like really lonely fucking days of the year, But which reminds me, kind of bringing it up. So, so my reading is, so I think, I don't know if I focused on this or not, if it was Valentine's Day, but again, maybe it was, but I also have here, I'm just going to read it and we'll go from there. February 14th from 366 effing days sober. It says, the opposite of love is not hate. It's indifference. Have you ever tried someone's patience so fucking much that they no longer even hate you? Your actions have caused them to simply ignore you, as though you no longer even fucking existed. It's cold shit. You literally don't matter to them anymore. Happy Valentine's Day. So maybe you haven't noticed the impact of your actions on someone like this, but it does happen. These people don't make grand gestures about it. One day they decide that they have had enough, and poof, they have made up their minds. They no longer care to either love or hate you. The change is noticeable. They stop calling or don't reply. The texts stop. When you see them in passing, they are always busy. You don't see that you stepped on the toes of those around you one too many times, and sometimes the only way they can retaliate is by negating your existence altogether. The reflections from that day are from February 14th, Valentine's Day. How many relationships have you had that you thought were great? Still, for some reason, unknown to you, they no longer come around anymore. Have you ever decided to be indifferent to someone? Daily challenge. Get on Facebook and look for that old friend. Tell them how much they mean to you. Then let the rest happen on its own from there. So
that's a great reflection.
Yeah, it's so funny. There's so many people that I've really loved in my life. You're talking about love. That I never really expressed it to, like, because I was talking to a sponsor the other day, and it was so great because I'm sitting there and I'm talking to him and I'm saying, hey, this is how you need to be, much like you're doing, like, putting people on your payroll and this kind of thing, and when you get to know somebody, be interested in what they're doing, etc. And then and so I'm sitting there and I realize, like, I'm describing to this person like what it's like to be a friend, right? And the way that I found that is, and I was like, at the end, I was like, oh geez, I was like, oh yeah, they're basically somebody that you really get to know that you don't put your dick into. That's how you. Like, it was just like, but it was just so funny because I'm sitting here trying to describe. I accidentally described friendship to a sponsee, basically.
Oh my God.
Yes, and the punchline is basically that, like, I accidentally, yeah. So that's the idea, is that, because men have such a different way to reflect on things, right? Yeah. So when we get to know ourselves and we get to look back at our past behaviors and we kind of move forward, it's like we don't really realize, like, how much damage we actually did. Right, so we stepped on the toes of the people around us, and they could retaliate in so many ways. But there's a lot of these people that just were like, I don't want to deal with that person anymore, and it was you, and they just said, no, thank you. No matter how close you were, no matter you just won too many times, pissed in their Cheerios, and they're done. And so
they're because I talk about the payroll. Currency is your energy. So if they have already spent so much energy on you that they just don't have any left, you just reach a point when you're done. And I've been there with people too, and there's just no point. There's no ROI. There probably hasn't been for a really long time, but you're in such a deficit that you're just in survival mode and just almost kind of become numb, I think, to the whole thing.
And I think when you get sober, there's like ways in which, love relationships actually do that. And then friendship relationships that had love, you still have to evaluate these things, and you evaluate these things. Yes. And then never mind just in recovery, but life in general is like that, right? But it's funny, we get into recovery and we get this habit of examining our lives, and, and we take a reflective looks at what our behaviors are, and we really start to see it, and then we become hyper aware sometimes of the damage that we create, and the love loss that surrounds all that stuff. So that's what it was for me. It's like there was like, when I not only did I notice, like when I went to go make amends, there were people who were like, no, I'm good, I don't want to talk to you ever again. And I'm like, okay, I understood. And then there's people who just like, when I go to call or make a connection, crickets. You know what I mean? I was like, oh, so those are the people that were the opposite of love is not hate. It was indifference. Right?
Yeah.
So, and I just like, so I created a lot of indifference in the world. So there's a lot of nuance to this love relationship kind of a deal.
Definitely.
So how do you, so talking to the new person or the person with, that maybe is still in their first 3-4 months, I can definitely talk to staying in your marriage and how to deal with that. Because, by the way, they don't talk about that in the big book very much, do they? They don't say, you know what I mean? Yeah, they do to the wives and this kind of stuff.
I was just going to say to the wives, but that's...
But it's different. You know what I mean? It's like
different.
Yeah, it really is. And and then when they give advice in the rooms of like, don't get into a relationship in your first year of recovery, I'm like, too late. Like, what do you say?
Right.
Where's our little catchy saying for us married fucking people, right? Fuck you. So no, it's a little harder and a little more nuanced than that. So what do you say to the people that are new in recovery, 3-6 months, either side of the fence, in relationships, not in relationships, married, otherwise? What do you say to them thinking about, I don't know, moving forward in recovery as it deals with love and relationships?
So this thought is coming to me. I was in an NA meeting once a couple of years ago, and I think a bunch of people had come, from the bus from a treatment center.
Yeah, druggy buggy, yeah.
Yeah, and the guy giving the lead said, raise your hand if you're within 6 months of treatment. And like so many people raised their hand. It was a young people meeting, so it was that demographic. And he said, if you're in treatment and you think you're in love, you're not. If you met in treatment, just stop now. So what would I say? I would say if you're in a relationship, really taking time and not making any haste decisions, whether you're thinking of leaving them or not. Mm-hmm. And then unless your sponsor advises otherwise, or it's an unsafe thing, but if you're just kind of like on the fence casually, just thinking about things, not changing too much in the first year. And then if you're alone and thinking about dating, but don't really have a prospect, or kind of do, but it's not, I personally would err on the side of caution of focusing on your growth. I don't think that you will ever regret that if you are serious about this, because what happens when we rush into relationships when we're in such a vulnerable state is it can get really confusing. It takes up a lot of headspace, and at least it did for me. So I knew that physically I wouldn't be able to hold that much in my brain while I was getting sober, because for me, dating was another obsession. It was just completely all-consuming. So you know yourself best. Really, really think about it. Think about that this is a foundation you're building for the rest of your life. And so have a real, genuine heart-to-heart with yourself about what the best option is. Dating will always be there. I promise. And when you're in a place where you can be a whole person dating, it's a pretty amazing experience. You have a lot more choices. I will say that.
Lindsey, I am so glad that you did not share this in a men's meeting, because they would have laughed you the fuck out of this place. They would have been like, get the fuck out. Okay. So to my dudes, right? Like, it's so funny. Like, I love being married because I don't really have that like desire. I don't really have that need. And I get to stand on the sidewalk after the meeting, and I get to watch all these dudes that if looks could be criminalized, these guys would all be in jail, right? So it's like so one of the things that I understand, which is, again, you got libido, and you got young dudes with time on their hands. But let me just frame it this way. you will do more damage to another human being in meetings, by the way, especially if you're chasing people in treatment centers and in meetings, you're doing a lot of harm, right? And though that person may be consenting to a relationship, it is the most unhealthy relationship you are ever going to. First of all, a couple things, which is one, if you're newly getting sober and you got like less than, I don't know, 6 months and you still don't have a job and you still have debt and you still aren't consistent and you still have issues and you're still just trying to get your feet underneath you, what fucking girl is going to look at you and go, yeah, I want all that? Right?
A really sick one. A really sick one like me.
Right? And so that's completely what you're going to get, a really sick person. So, and how many times have we been there, done that? And then again, it always leads us back. And like I said, well, like you said, which I really love, is that this adds way more distraction than it's worth. So not only are you taking advantage or harming somebody else in their recovery and their journey, etc., but then you're also just wasting your energy, because now you're going to also invite another tornado to mix with your tornado, and it doesn't really go well. It never goes well. And then again, to the dudes that like are continually doing this in the rooms, stop. Go fucking actually approach, somebody who's got their shit together and try to deal with that. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
because
stop being weird.
Yeah. Stop being creepy, you motherfuckers. So, but yeah, in no way, there is nothing especially in the first year, there's nothing that a relationship really gains. I mean, again, anybody willing to get involved with you and vice versa, that's just it's just adding more dysfunction to what's already there. It never really results in, sane behaviors, as they say. So, hey, I mean, some people it does work for, don't get me wrong. Some people, I mean,
there's always exceptions to the rule.
Always exceptions, right? Some people get, my sponsor, John, met his wife in the rooms and, they long-term marriage and recovery, yada, yada, yada. Good for each other. Yeah.
Definitely not saying don't meet in the rooms. A lot of people do that very successfully, but typically not within the first year.
Typically not within the first year, yeah.
Because I know if I had dated in the first year, it would have just been from a place of like, love me, make me feel better now because I just want to drink and I need you to fix me, and so I would have been in the same exact thing and probably relapsed when it, to my surprise, didn't work out, and I heard once 2 sickies don't make a welly. And I
yeah, that's a good one. Yeah, yeah. So and for me, it's like, again, and for married dudes, it's like, dude, you can fantasize all you want, but the fact is that, you're gonna, so, I started back in the rooms at 42 and I was like, I just wanted to hide out. Like, I just wanted to I want to leave all my problems behind. And the more that I sat in the rooms, the more I learned that, I needed to be a different person, not that my outside things needed to change, and that there was already a life that was built for me. I just needed to walk into it, and I needed to walk into it with a little different swagger, right? So that was the idea. So I know a lot of married dudes, they come in and, a lot of marriages do not survive recovery. They just don't. And so there is that too. But I think to your point, Lindsey, is like, what are your motives about doing that? Right.
1,000%.
So is it that you just want to get out? Do you just want to escape, or do you just want to find something new? I mean, is it still selfish? Is it still self-centered? Is your relationship like on the outs, or is it repairable but with some fucking work? Because believe me, I'm sitting here with 10 years doing the fucking work as much as I can, right? So as much as I know to do, I try to do. So I'm not always successful at it. Believe me, there's somebody else participating in that as well, right? So it makes it really hard sometimes. So I get it. But you know what? Just because it's fucking hard doesn't mean you don't have to do that, and doesn't mean that your soul doesn't desire that too. So that's
a really good point. Yeah.
So that's what I step up for, even when it's hard. So, and it's always hard. That just came out of my mouth. Anyway,
I've heard it doesn't get easier, but it gets better, and I've certainly found that to be true. Not just talking about relationships, but just in recovery, certain pain points.
Yeah, and I think how we started this episode, which is basically like the more I get to know myself, the more I understand what my needs, wants, and desires are, the more the more capable I am to like deal with the things that do come up. Because it used to be in the past that I didn't have an opinion, or I didn't have a need or a purpose, or virtue or value. I just had none of that stuff. So I was bouncing off the walls of the world like a pinball machine. Every day I woke up is like pull that plunger and I'm ding 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 ding. And now I just don't do any of that stuff, right? I don't pull the plunger. I really know what I want to do. I'm not playing that game anymore, period. So so
you're more mindful.
So when these things come up, I have more purpose and so I know what I want out of those things. And it's really about getting to yourself first. It's like they always say in the rooms, like, it's your job to put your mask on first, when the plane's going down, because if you can't do that, you can't help others. And that's just the reality of it. It's so true.
It really is. It really is. And it only will earn you more respect and love from that future hypothetical partner. It just can't go wrong with working on yourself or focusing on yourself. So
when you say, you mean it'll get you laid more, right? Is that what you're saying?
Am I talking to the men? Am I talking to the men's meeting right now, or the?
You're talking to the men's meeting right now. Yeah, that's exactly.
Yeah, and
the men's meeting inside
quality.
my head.
It'll be better quality with a woman who knows who she is and what she wants, and
right. Yeah.
All ways, however you slice it. Yeah.
Awesome. So, Lindsey, I think we've played this love topic to its end. I think we did a good service about telling the people, hang in there, don't drink that bottle with legs.
Wow. Did you just come up with a new slogan that's going to be on the wall of the AA meeting?
Not at all. That's actually it's a saying in the rooms, actually. So learn what you really desire, right, before you ruin somebody else's life.
Yeah, a good one.
Okay. So what do you say to the kind, wonderful, considerate, compassionate, loving lemmings out there?
My tagline or my summary of the episode?
Go both. Summarize and tagline it. Take us home.
I think it's both, actually. My tagline is my summary of everything I just said. Stay sober and trust your truth.
And then I say, stay active, stay sober. See ya.
Soberpod.com. Yeah. It was a sight to see him. Breakfast with Sprite and Seagrams. Wrestling with my vices, exercising my demons. My blessings were blocked, so I never got the message. I'm stressing, I'm only 12 steps from an exit. Regret it, because my imperfections were perfected. I ain't run from it, I accept it and rep it. It's a badge to me, good stories come from a tragedy. And when you survive, the glory will come in Act 3. The wait's over, 366 days sober. Morning affirmations that can start the day for you. Use my favorite bookmark for a placeholder. Finish when the day's over. Okay. Yeah, sober pod, keep it authentic, no facades. If it's real, then you know it's ours. Welcome.